Today, I was joined in the Hotelier Huddle by Heidi Gempel, certified executive coach, former vice president revenue and distribution management for minor hotels, and currently she is the founder and trainer at HGE International. Heidi has some brilliant thoughts, not just for hoteliers, but for anyone, on leadership, how we define success, and she also had a top tip for how we should spend a spare 15 minutes today to invest in our own development. Enjoy. Heidi Gempel, thank you for joining the Hotelier Huddle today. It's nice to see you.
It's good to be here. Thank you for the invitation. It's an absolute delight to join you today.
Thank you. If you don't mind, I like to kick off each episode by letting our listeners know just how expertly qualified you are to be in the huddle. So, because your career especially is so interesting, and I know my listeners are going to go, wow, how can I be like her? Because your career journey so far, you're a certified results coach in executive and life coaching. Wow. You were director of revenue management Asia Pacific for Le Méridien hotels for 7 years. I think I've got that right. Yeah.
Yeah, about that.
And then you were vice president of revenue and distribution management for minor hotels. I think you were based in Bangkok then for 4 years.
Correct.
Then you were a project manager facilitator at HSMAI, which is where you and I met doing various HSMAI facilitation and project work, right?
Yes.
And you are currently founder, executive coach, strategic facilitator, and trainer with your very own company, HGE International, based in Singapore for 15 years. Wow.
Yes.
That's really, not everyone who starts their own business survives for 15 years. Well done, you.
I know. I think we've got a few colleagues that have started and packed up again after a few years, right?
Yeah, and I think in some cases it's because, they enjoyed a different way of working and they enjoyed maybe the drama of being in amongst it in the hotel environment, because who doesn't love a circus and a drama? Some people enjoyed the more stable stability of the same paycheck all the time instead of a consultant's paycheck until you get established. That takes a while. So anyway, well done you.
Thank you. Well, it wasn't a linear line. Let me put it that way. And I'm sure. I mean, if we had more time, then a nice cup of coffee. There would be lots of things we would have in common. We would find out. But I guess it's an up and down, and probably like most of life is a little bit. You've got your high moments and you've got your low moments. So. For me, it was always, I love hospitality. I love the sheer thought about looking after people, taking care of them. I think it's a recession-proof industry.
Yes.
I think it's one of those industries that, we might actually see once we translate into the eternity. It is, baby Jesus was born in an Airbnb. And I like to say that, and there's hospitality is just needed everywhere. And it is such a big part of our, just basic human needs. So I've always loved the industry. The corporate career, though, I think it's not that I was really dissatisfied with it, but I guess over time I just realized what it is that I truly want to do and who I am as an individual. Yes. So it wasn't an overnight shift. It was really a gradual realization of who I am, who I want to be. And I think this last installment of, truly taking on this coaching piece and becoming an ICF certified coach and really helping people, it's so much who I am. So I'm really enjoying it.
Yes, I love that. And yes, if only there had been rooms at the inn that night, right? And you started to answer this question, but with your primary focus on coaching, mentoring, and training hoteliers, you've spent, as I mentioned, 15 years building HGE International. It sounds like there wasn't any one sort of epiphany or breakthrough that made you do a leap from your corporate vice president revenue role to founding your own business, right? It was an evolution, wasn't it?
I've come from a family of entrepreneurs, and there was always this desire of me wanting to sort of have my own company and decide my own, fate, if you like. So that desire, I think, was always there. I think when I started out, I didn't really know what it is that I would end up doing. And I think in 15 years, I've tried different things, anything from outsourcing revenue management to consulting to project work to, all kinds of things. I even tried hiring people for, like a placement company for a while.
I did too. Yeah.
So I think there were lots of different things, lots of trial and errors in the process. And then, COVID hit, and I don't know what it did to your business, but it killed my clients for me. And I sat down, I had a lot of time, and I'm like, well, what am I going to do? And I reflected a little bit on the work that I had been doing, which was very much focused, helping leaders drive commercial value, create asset, create value for their guests. And invariably, we ended up in leadership discussions and value creation discussions and things like that. And I sort of had done this coaching piece for a very long time.
Accidentally on purpose.
Yes, sort of. So I thought, I have time during COVID, and let me do the training to become a proper coach.
Yes.
And I think, if you know anything about the world of self-development, it opens up doors for you, right, in you, and as you work with people. And so I'm really enjoying this journey now of doing coaching-led training even, as well as doing executive coaching and truly unlocking people's potential, but also value for the hospitality businesses they work in.
Oh, I love that. And, I in the first sort of, year 2 and year 3 of Snap Consulting for me, I did actually have employees and a couple of contractors. And what happened 3 times in a row was that I would farm out my employee or my contractor to be the revenue manager for hire, distribution manager for hire in a client property. And the Snap Consulting person did such a great job that they were offered a permanent full-time role as the client's employee, which was great. On the one hand, the clients saw Snap Consulting as providing a good solution for them. But to me, it was like, again. And, I hadn't quite got the hang of my own pricing model. Ironic, because I teach hoteliers how to set their prices. And I wasn't putting enough markup on what I was charging out. There wasn't enough margin. And so, the clients were getting a great deal, but I was making nothing on it, and it was just a lot of work. And so I thought, I'm just going to be a one-person band. But I do from time to time, I contract in specialists for certain projects where they might have a certain certification or specific experience that's needed on a project that I don't have. But yeah, I did have in the beginning employees and contractors, and I don't think I'll go that way again.
Well, but it's that journey, right? Finding out what you do enjoy doing and realizing, no, you know what? I'm not so much in that direction. And that to me is the beauty of if you have the opportunity to work on your own and you have that freedom, you can actually make these kind of decisions.
Yeah, and that's right.
What a privilege, right? What a privilege.
Oh, it's an absolute privilege. And, we're rare in our species of people that have the privilege of being able to earn a living in such a way, right?
Well, but we are also the ones who are willing to take that risk, right? Mm-hmm. Because there is, I think a lot more people could take that step if they were willing to accept the risk at the same time. Because if you don't find a contract, if I don't find a contract, we don't have any food on the table.
That's right.
It is a give and take. So I think if someone truly wanted to make that choice, they can. They have that opportunity, and it is on them to say yes or no to it.
I suppose thinking of, people that specialize in risk and calculated risk in particular, when I think of the revenue managers who listen to Hotelier Huddle podcast, you're someone that I would consider a guru in the field of our industry. And I feel like hotel revenue management as a discipline can sort of feel like a world of spreadsheets and algorithms. So I wonder, from your lens, how do you bring the human element to the numbers game?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question and a necessary one. Because I think numbers, they inform the decisions that we have to make, but people make the decisions.
Yes.
So, and this is maybe, where my story also comes full circle. It is not necessarily the technical aspect of revenue management that attracted me so much, but it is that the execution of revenue management is deeply human.
Interesting.
There are enough studies now, there is a study now that even, the biases that a revenue manager carries influences the quality of the automated forecast that comes out of the RMS.
Yes.
So it's, it comes back to the individual and some of the deep-seated beliefs that they carry. So for me, even though it is all, a lot of people say it's all about numbers, and in fact, doing at the moment a statistics course for revenue manager, right? It's all about numbers. But at the end of it, it comes down to the human and making that decision. So for me, it's really an intersection of trust and confidence, but also data and judgment and bringing that together.
Well, that's right, because even as an ideas revenue management system user, you still know always just a little bit more about your customers, a little bit more about the local weather, a little bit more about something that your RMS might not quite know yet. But still, intuition alone is not going to be the solution either. And there's always the human consideration of not just the revenue manager who's deploying these revenue decisions, but the human factor of the potential guests and customers that those decisions will impact. Because humans make all kinds of wackadoodle decisions based on the prices we put out and the offers and the segmentation and the promotions, and how our customers consume that as human beings and how that is changing all the time. That's a critical piece that sure AI can solve some of that, but humans are mission critical, I think.
I think so, because our data, or the data that we have, too much data at times, right? And the data will not drive the performance. The data may drive certain decisions or may be the driving force behind it. What actually makes the decision is the conversation that happens around the table. And I think this is the critical path, and where I feel, I want to contribute is really working with leaders to help them use the data and understand the data rather than hide behind it. Because
yes,
I'm sure we've seen enough revenue managers.
Yes.
Right. So it is helping them to actually understand what that means. And I think there is a lot more to it. I think there is a lot more we can do as an industry, and to for me, ideas or any of the RMSs, they optimize segments, but they don't optimize customer experiences. They don't optimize these things. And this is the sort of feedback and input that we need in our revenue strategy meetings around the table.
Yes.
It is that conversation that will help us drive performance ultimately.
That's right, because our decision-making calculus changes all the time as well, right? And there's certain things that an RMS will always do better, at least better than my brain can do, like a displacement calculation, or things that are really hard even with a spreadsheet. But then all of the other things you just mentioned really requires us humans to run it, in my view.
I agree with that.
On HSMI, I mentioned that one of the places where you and I have met and interacted a few times over the years is with, for those of you playing acronym bingo at home, Hotel Sales and Marketing Association International, which is 100 years old this year. 100.
I know.
Yikes. It's not a new thing. Yeah. So HSMI sort of gives us a front row seat to industry trends. And I'm curious, what's one emerging shift that you think hoteliers might be underestimating? And I'm wondering if you're just going to say it's AI that everyone is understandably obsessed with at the moment, or is it something else?
What I'm learning, and because of the influx of AI, I think it's increased complexity. It is, things are getting more complex. Decisions that used to be done, maybe 2 or 3 factors, now we have 5, 6, and 10 factors to consider to make the same decision. So it is not so much the influx of AI, but the consequence that has. And what I'm seeing for me personally is that what is becoming more apparent is that leadership gap.
Yes.
That more so than the technical gap, because AI will take care of a lot of the technical things in the future.
Sure.
And it has advanced so fast, but the leadership capability hasn't always kept pace. So we have, I just mentioned, revenue managers hiding behind numbers that they're given by a system because they no longer understand the underlying logic behind those numbers.
Yes.
And this is, I think, where if organizations still promote based on expertise, they will get into trouble, rather than if they actually promote according to readiness of leadership. So I think for me, this is a little bit, that's a bit hiding in the dark, is this thing
Yes.
of, we're advancing so fast technologically, but we're not necessarily growing as fast in our leadership capability. And so that to me at the moment is one of the key drivers for my conversations.
I think revenue managers, as a role, they sometimes get a bad rap, right? And they get labeled as the rate police. Although I think we're starting to grow up as an industry, and maybe that's not so much the case anymore. But I wonder if you've also seen that sentiment shift and evolve over time in terms of operations, sales, and revenue teams starting to speak the same language and genuinely collaborate. Are you seeing that, or not quite yet?
Let's see what is the best way. No, because I want to be careful about how I phrase it, because I feel our revenue managers, they've come a long way.
Yes.
And they are technically very, very capable. But this sentiment still exists. I think, what you just mentioned, that they are still considered the rate police. There are still, I know sales teams that are scared of going to their revenue leaders to ask for rates. But what I've noticed is that this often happens because our revenue managers, they haven't understood yet how to hold those conversations.
Yes.
Where they invite the other party to the table, and they actually create a solution for the problem. So it's, I think that that label still exists, where the language that is being used is misaligned.
Yes.
And when revenue is invited into conversations early, and if they know how to carry themselves through those conversations, I think that whole thing about policing will go away, because it becomes a mature dialogue. And so I think the GMs play a critical role in this, in modeling this.
I agree.
And also this cross-functional respect for one another. Because I have seen it both ways. I have seen in some where revenue management, all they did was report the numbers, and the decisions were made by, this demigod called director of sales and marketing, together with the GM. But I've also seen it the other way, where the general manager wouldn't move without the revenue manager speaking, and it was just as unhealthy.
Yes.
So I think it really is learning, having those, having the leadership, as in the general manager and the executive committee team, really understand the role, really appreciate the insight, but also the revenue managers being able to step up in maturity so that they can step out of the policing and into strategic conversation, because they're two very different things.
They are. And, you said the maturity word there, and I almost think that's the most important word, because a revenue manager who hasn't yet built that maturity muscle, who's still a little bit insecure in the role, but wildly smart at the technical part, and doesn't yet know, maybe they haven't had training by you, Heidi, to learn how to lead those conversations. They go into those tough revenue meetings, and because they're fearful perhaps that technology might take their job, they want to be the smartest guy in the room and dazzle everyone with detail and baffle them with their brilliance about all of these technical things, and just, oh no, it's too hard. There's too much science involved. I'm not going to tell you how I came to this decision. This is just what it is. And that's a very fearful, I think, way to operate. Whereas, to your point, if you involve everyone in how you came to that decision, and the sales and the operations and other disciplines in the ecosystem are aware of how you came to the recommendation that maybe sales should pull back on room nights in a particular segment this quarter, and that's going to be an unpopular suggestion, but here's how I came to that decision, and here's why. It's a very different, evolved conversation, isn't it? And not so fearful, and doesn't come from a place of defense, self-preservation.
Correct. For me, one of the key traits of a good revenue manager is the ability to influence. So besides the technical knowledge, but truly understanding how do I actually, because we have very little, or revenue managers have very little direct control over things. Their teams are generally very small, maybe a reservation team, maybe a second or third in command, right? But that's it. So, and then you've got sales teams of 15, 20 people in some of the larger properties. But the only skill they have in order to influence strategic decisions is through learning how to do that, that influence. And I think this is it has to do with maturity. It has to do with plain training. It has to do with learning how to negotiate, learning how to invite people, even though you disagree with them, invite them around the table, have those conversations, and see if you can actually understand their point of view. So that to me, and this is why the coaching piece became so real to me, because I realized that it's not more technical knowledge I needed to train them. I need to train them how to stand up as leaders. I need to train them how to have conversations where they matter, where they can stand up under pressure, and they can speak with weightiness and seriousness. And that, I think, is where I feel we need to put another one or two logs in the fire to keep that burning, to keep that increasing. Yeah.
That's such great advice. And, considering your, passion and skill in developing people's abilities in that way, if a listener to this podcast has a spare 15 minutes today to invest in their own development, what would you suggest they do other than subscribing to this podcast? Would that be a different investment of 15 minutes in your development time, depending on your role? Or is there like one thing you think every hotelier should do right now today?
I'll answer that in a minute. But before that, I have to say, and this is my me being a coach, right?
Off you go.
It is not just for a revenue manager or a hotelier. Every person should do this.
Yes,
right?
yes.
If we stop growing, we don't just stagnate, we regress. So I think everyone should have a few growth goals in their life. For this year, we're still in February. It's still not too late to come up with some of those. But to your point earlier, what are these 15 minutes? If you wanted to really just grow a little, stand up a little taller, be a little more courageous in your in your decisions. I think one of it is step away from reacting and just ask someone one good question.
Yes.
So when you're tempted to, somebody questions your forecast, and instead of going defensive, you actually invite a question, for example.
Yes.
So that's number one. The second one is reflect on what decisions you are actually avoiding.
Oh, that's interesting. Tell me more. Because that sounds scary in the best kind of way.
Yes.
Tell me more.
Well, we all framed, we all carry a different lens.
Yes.
So, my lens might be purple, yours might be yellow and pink. I don't know, right? But we all have a different lens, and that is shaped by our experiences, by our, goes into psychology and stuff like that.
Successes and failure experiences, right?
Both.
Yeah.
But learning to understand what decisions you are actually avoiding is a little bit like you're putting up a mirror.
Oh, that's so interesting.
And you're saying, what am I avoiding, right? And because it gets maybe a little bit painful, a little bit shameful, people might experience shame in that moment.
Sure.
A little bit guilty. It's that sort of engagement. If you start doing that with you, you can uncover a few things in yourself. You can find healing in some other areas. In other areas, you can become bold and you say, no, I overcome, and I will ask those questions, even though I've been avoiding them.
I love that. And so would you say that sentiment and that, modus operandi, if you like, has that perhaps defined or change the way you define success, either for yourself or for your business, or the way you suggest your clients define success? Because, yes, we can all look at MPI and, revenue generation index and just pure profit, of course. But does, some of the things in terms of development and evolution, has that started to shift the way that you define success for yourself and for your own business and maybe even for your staff?
Obviously, if in a work environment, we're given our KPIs, we have our, targets to hit and all of that. But if you talk about you personally, so that growth that I just mentioned, some of the things you can do, I think it's learning to stretch yourself a little bit more. And in that, you begin to expand as an individual. So it will affect your relationships. It will affect your everyday conversations. So for me, and this is what started to happen. So it went beyond just KPIs and what we need to hit, because the results fluctuate. There are so many factors that I can and cannot control at times. But what I saw happening is that leadership pattern, they kept repeating. So it's really, for me, it's about optimizing, if I use that revenue management term, people creates a more durable outcome than just optimizing my spreadsheets. So that is a little bit for me where I've been learning, if I learn how to work with you better, you will actually want to deliver better results.
Yes.
So my challenge is no longer about, okay, how do we hit those numbers alone? It is, how can I help Shannon become the best version of herself? Because then I know that moment she does that, the results will follow.
Oh, I love that.
So for me, it's really, when I speak particularly at corporate levels, when they talk about succession planning, and it's always a big topic, because we have a lot of people coming through the pipeline. The need to build good leaders will not go away. And so for me, the question is not just the numbers anymore, but are we building leaders who can sustain the success? Because you don't just want people that in 5 years are burned out and leave the industry and you've invested everything for nothing. But you need to find a sustainable model where they can find fulfillment, and yet, we do this. So my measure of success has become a little bit that, to really ask the question, are we building the right leaders to help us carry this forward?
In a similar way, then, I wonder, going back to when you first started in revenue management, if what did you believe was back then the key to driving performance? And perhaps how has that belief evolved? There's that word evolution again, over the years, as you've seen what truly moves the needle, so to speak, long term.
Another really good question. You ask me very deep questions, Shannon.
Well, that's what we do here, Heidi.
The things I had to learn when I stepped into my own company is learning to look away from short-term successes into long-term.
That's
health.
so hard to do. That's so hard to do, isn't it?
Yeah. And unlearning that urgency, that response out of urgency, is a default mode. I think that is one of those things that I had to really, I had to really learn, because we are trained, the inventory is perishable. You need to fill those rooms, right? So there's an urgency.
Our product is going to expire when the night audit runs tonight at 1 a.m. Our products are all expiring for today. Oh.
That's right. And it's all about, the right time at the right place and all of that, right?
Yes,
so that breeds urgency. But when we start to get into that state of urgency, we actually switch off a lot of our rational thinking. And that I had to unlearn. I still am at times. So I think that's one. The other one is, that is very personal to me. Maybe some other people struggle with that, but is replacing the need for control with trust and clarity.
Oh, that's a hard one.
And it's really learning to do this with my clients, with my contracts, with my family, with my with the people that I train, to really step away from, I can't control the outcome, but I can trust the process. I can trust the clarity that I put before them, and just wait for the results to come through. And then maybe the last one is that, and maybe this is giving my age away, but learning to think in seasons rather than quarters.
Well, yes. And, seasons aren't just for wholesale contracts, right? Seasons aren't just for blackout dates. Seasons, we can 6 different seasons in one calendar month in some destination properties, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
and
I love that.
it's the thing, it's just because sustainable. The thing is sustainability. I'm in this for the long run, right? So sustainable results, they really come when I'm at a calm place, when I am fully me, and not from constant urgency.
Yes.
It's just toxic. So these are some things I had to learn. And every time I go back into a hotel, I can feel that underlying hum, that urgent,
Yes,
and
yes.
And
it is very buzzy, and you get that kind of dope hit and a little bit of adrenaline, and that's good, but not for your long-term health.
Correct. And that, I think, is something as an industry, and I think it will come because I've been doing a bit of reading on this whole longevity a movement that we're seeing, and hospitality should be at the forefront, but we cannot do this if we keep running like little hamsters. We have to learn to slow down and actually give our guests the opportunity to enjoy that peace and calm, and for that we can't be nervous and urgent all the time. So I'm hopeful about that, actually.
I love that. I love it. Okay, so in closing, Heidi, we close each Hotelier Huddle episode with this same question, which is a final toast. And if you are raising a glass to celebrate hoteliers everywhere, what would your toast be?
I think I would want to raise a toast to hoteliers everywhere for all the unseen decisions, the care behind the scenes.
Nice.
The courage to keep showing up with heart, even when the pressure is high. Because I think, so that would be my toast. Because I think unless you've actually experienced this industry, you don't really understand. And so to every hotelier who is willing to engage day after day in this and show up with their entire heart and look after guests and care for their staff and move business forward and be creative and all of this, a toast and many, many more. I mean, they're amazing.
I love that, Heidi. And you're so right, because, being a hotelier, it's a physical, immersive way to earn a living, isn't it? And I enjoy now having this conversation with hoteliers or hotel adjacent people like tech providers or software engineers that make software for hoteliers that haven't actually done the job, and they don't quite understand the immersive from the inside out nature of how a hotelier earns a living every day. And until you've walked in their shoes, so to speak, it's quite hard to understand, isn't it? So that's a perfect toast, and I just love it, Heidi. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. It's been an absolute privilege. Thank you, Shannon.
Thanks.